She sat quietly near the window, a simple college student carrying an old backpack and a notebook filled with half-finished assignments. No one paid attention to her when she boarded the plane. People were too busy finding seats, arranging luggage, or complaining about delays. She looked young, maybe too young to be traveling alone, yet she moved with a calmness that didn't match her age. She just wanted to go home after a long semester, hoping for a few days of rest before exams. The world around her kept moving, but she stayed unnoticed. The cabin lights dimmed as the doors closed. The flight seemed normal, peaceful even. Passengers talked softly, some scrolling on phones, others leaning back to sleep. The engines hummed. Steadily, she placed her notebook on her lap, trying to focus on her notes, but her mind wandered. Her father used to say that every journey teaches something. She wondered what this one would teach her. She had no idea that within an hour, the entire fate of the plane would shift toward her seat. A few rows ahead, a man coughed loudly. A couple whispered something about turbulence. A flight attendant passed by with a polite smile, checking if everyone had their belts fastened. Everything felt routine until it didn't. Suddenly, the intercom made a strange static sound. The cabin fell quiet. Passengers looked up. The college student raised her head too. Something in the air felt wrong, like a moment holding its breath. Then, the captain's voice came through, shaken, trembling. Nothing like the calm and confident tone pilots always use. "Attention. This is the captain. We have an emergency." People froze. A woman in the aisle seat covered her mouth. A child clutched his toy tighter. The captain continued, voice cracking. "Our pilot is unconscious. We currently have no one controlling the aircraft." Gasps spread across the cabin like a wave. Panic rose. Someone shouted, "What do you mean, no pilot?" Another person stood up before a flight attendant, quickly pushed him back into his seat. Fear tightened the air, heavy and cold. The college student's heart pounded, not from fear of flying, but from something deeper, something she had buried inside herself for years. She swallowed hard, gripping her notebook until her knuckles turned pale. She didn't want attention. She wasn't expecting to be noticed. But the captain's words had pulled her into a place she never wanted to be again. People started praying. Others cried softly. Some demanded answers. The flight attendants tried their best to calm everyone, but even they looked terrified. The plane felt different, now no longer a safe space carrying people to their destinations, but a fragile metal shell drifting in the sky. With hundreds of lives hanging on a thin thread, the captain spoke again, breathing fast. "If there is anyone on board with aviation training, please come forward immediately. We need help in the cockpit." The cabin fell silent again. Everyone looked around, hoping anyone would stand up. No one did. The college student closed her eyes for a moment. She could almost hear her father's voice again, teaching her the basics of flying years ago. She had grown up around small training aircraft, watching instructors, listening to them, practicing in simulators. She had passed beginner courses before entering college, but she had stopped after a family tragedy. She had promised herself she would never fly again, but this wasn't about her anymore. Her breathing grew uneven. She looked at the terrified faces around her. A flight attendant near her was trembling while trying to reassure an elderly passenger. Another was wiping tears. The engines continued their steady hum, but now each sound felt heavier. Inside the girl, two sides battled. One wanted to stay quiet, remain the unnoticed college student who just wanted to go home. The other side, the one shaped by her father's teachings and by years of hidden training, whispered that she knew things others didn't. Whispered that she might be the only hope. The captain called again, this time louder, more desperate. "If anyone can assist, please, we're losing altitude control." That sentence broke something inside her. She slowly unbuckled her seatbelt. Her hands shook, but her eyes grew steady, as if a fire she had been holding back had finally awakened. People around her watched as she stood up. A few thought she was heading to the restroom. They didn't know that this quiet girl carried something powerful, knowledge that could save all of them. She stepped into the aisle, her old backpack still hanging off one shoulder. A flight attendant hurried over, panicked, asking her to return to her seat. But when the girl spoke, her voice was soft yet certain. I think I can help." The attendant blinked in confusion. "Help? How?" The girl looked toward the cockpit door, then at the frightened passengers whose lives were hanging in the balance. "I have training," she whispered. "Not much, but enough to understand the controls." In that moment, for the first time since boarding, people noticed her, really noticed her. The quiet student, the one no one looked at twice, was suddenly the center of hope on a plane slowly losing its pilot. Asterisk. The flight attendant stared at the college student as if she hadn't heard correctly. Passengers nearby leaned forward, trying to understand who this quiet girl really was. She looked too young, too gentle, too ordinary to say something so heavy. The attendant hesitated, then grabbed the intercom phone and whispered urgently to the cockpit. Within seconds, the captain's voice returned, tighter and more urgent than before. "Send her. Send her to the front immediately." People parted in the aisle as the student walked slowly toward the cockpit, each step feeling heavier than the last. She could feel every heartbeat, each one reminding her that she had tried to leave this part of her life behind. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to fly again. But now hundreds of lives depended on her. As she neared the cockpit door, the hum of the engines felt louder, more uneven. A tremor passed through the fuselage. Passengers grabbed armrests. The student felt the plane tilt slightly and steadied herself on a seat. Whatever condition the pilot was in, it was getting worse. The flight attendant pushed open the cockpit door, and the student stepped into a world she hadn't seen in years. Screens flickered, alarms flashed amber, and red lights blinked with warning messages she remembered from childhood training sessions. The co-captain sat rigid, trying to steady the aircraft, sweat shining on his forehead. The pilot lay slumped to one side, unconscious, breathing shallowly. The captain glanced back at her, startled by how young she looked. But he didn't have any other option. His voice was unsteady, but his eyes held a strange hope. "You said you've trained before?" She nodded. "Small aircraft, basic training. But I know how to read the instruments." That was enough for him. The captain motioned her toward the empty seat beside him. The student sat down slowly, almost afraid to touch anything. But as soon as her hands reached the controls, something inside her shifted. Muscle memory whispered through her fingers. The familiar scent of the cockpit oil, metal, plastic warmed by sunlight pulled her backward, in time to days when flying felt safe, easy, even joyful. The captain explained quickly, "We're dropping altitude." The autopilot failed. "I need someone who can monitor the right side controls while I try to stabilize the pitch." She nodded again, but her hands moved more confidently now. She scanned the instrument panel, reading each gauge, each number, each small change. She wasn't a licensed pilot, but she understood more than anyone expected. Outside the cockpit windows, clouds rolled past in messy layers. The aircraft trembled again, then steadied slightly under the captain's rough adjustments. He looked at her with disbelief. "You really know what you're doing." She didn't answer. She didn't want praise. She only wanted safety. Behind her, through the half-open door, she could hear whispers from frightened passengers. Some leaned into the aisle trying to see what was happening. Others prayed softly. Someone cried, asking a flight attendant if they were about to fall from the sky. The fear in their voices cut through her chest. She asked quietly, "What happened to the pilot?" The captain shook his head. "We don't know yet. He collapsed without warning. Med team is preparing for emergency treatment once we land. If we manage to." The words, "if we manage to," echoed painfully. The student focused harder. Her father's voice drifted back into her mind, calm and steady. When the sky panics, you stay calm. When the world shakes, your hands must not. She adjusted a knob the captain had missed, catching a small detail in the altitude indicator. The plane leveled just slightly, but enough for him to notice. "You caught that?" he asked. Surprised, she nodded. The right trim was drifting. He stared at her with a mixture of relief and confusion, as if trying to understand how a girl, barely out of her teens, could notice something even he didn't. A sudden jolt rocked the aircraft, throwing both of them forward. Passengers screamed. The captain gripped the controls tightly. A warning alarm beeped sharply. He muttered, "We're losing vertical stability again." He turned to her. "Can you help me watch the right side indicators? They're reacting too slowly." "Yes," she said, steadying herself. Fear tried to climb into her chest, but something stronger held it back. Below the cockpit, the flight attendant struggled to keep passengers calm. People whispered, "Who is she? Is that girl really helping fly the plane? She doesn't even look old enough." But inside the cockpit, she wasn't a frightened student. She was someone who understood the sky more than she ever admitted. She leaned closer to the screen, her eyes narrowing as the colors on the radar shifted from light green to a heavy, angry red. A storm system, large, fast-moving, and violent, was directly ahead of them. The student felt her breath catch. She had seen storms like this only once before, years back in a training simulator. Her father always warned her that weather was the sky's most unpredictable teacher. The captain was still focused on the controls, trying to steady the aircraft, unaware of the danger forming in front of them. She pointed at the radar with a shaky hand. "Captain, we're heading straight into a severe storm." He froze for a moment, then turned sharply toward the screen. His eyes widened. No. This wasn't in the forecast. It must have shifted. The turbulence grew stronger, as if the sky heard their fear and responded. Coffee cups rolled on the cockpit floor. A flight attendant stumbled outside the door. A baby started crying somewhere in the cabin. The plane trembled like it was shivering with them. The captain adjusted the controls quickly. "I need to change course, but the aircraft isn't responding fast enough." His hand tightened on the throttle. "If we enter that storm at this altitude, it's going to be bad." She felt fear tighten in her chest, but she also felt something else: determination, sharp and steady. Her father used to say storms were only dangerous when pilots hesitated. She wiped her palms against her jeans and forced herself to breathe. Slowly, she scanned the rest of the instruments. One small indicator caught her eye. The side wind alert was rising, but not from the direction of the storm. Something else was pushing them off balance. "We're drifting," she said. "The wind's stronger from the left. If we don't correct now, the storm will pull us in even faster." The captain gave her a surprised look again. "Good catch. Adjust the right stabilizer reading for me, slowly." She reached forward and turned the knob just a little, remembering exact movements from the simulator. The aircraft shifted slightly, but the trembling didn't stop. The storm's edge was already brushing them. The clouds outside thickened until the sky turned gray and heavy like wet concrete. Passengers started panicking as turbulence grew. Some shouted for oxygen masks. Others gripped their seats so tightly their knuckles turned white. Every jolt sent fear through the cabin. The officers couldn't leave the controls, and the attendants were struggling to keep people calm. The captain spoke into the radio again, but static swallowed his voice. "This storm is blocking our communication," he muttered, worry deepening on his face. Then he turned to her. "We may not have help from ground control. It's just us right now." Those words shouldn't have given her strength, but somehow they did. It reminded her that she wasn't here by accident. Maybe the sky had brought her back for a reason, when she didn't understand yet. She straightened up. "Captain, If we reduce power just a little and change angle, we might slip past the thickest part of the storm. He stared at her. Where did you learn that? She hesitated, her voice soft. I practiced flying with my father. He was an instructor. She swallowed hard. He taught me all these small details. The captain nodded slowly, as if finally understanding the depth behind her quiet confidence. Then trust what he taught you. Tell me exactly what you see. She felt something warm rise in her chest. Courage, maybe. Or memory. She forced her voice to stay steady. Drop speed by 3%. Then tilt 2 degrees right. Slowly, slowly. The captain followed her instructions carefully. The plane groaned like a giant unwilling to move, but it obeyed. The turbulence didn't stop, but the jerking became slightly more predictable. Almost rhythmic. Outside the windows, lightning flashed, lighting the sky with sudden white sheets. Thunder rumbled through the metal frame. A few passengers screamed each time the flash appeared. But the student kept her eyes forward, her hands resting near the controls, ready to react. Another alert blinked. She read it instantly. We're entering the storm's outer ring, she said quietly. The captain exhaled through his teeth. Then we hold this angle and ride it until we break through. Rain slammed against the cockpit glass in heavy, angry bursts. The clouds around them turned darker. The turbulence hit again, harder. A gas mask panel rattled above them. The aircraft dropped suddenly, just for a second, but enough to steal everyone's breath. Passengers cried out. A flight attendant fell. To her knees, someone yelled a prayer. The cabin felt like a world falling apart, but the student didn't break. Her father's voice echoed again. The sky respects steady hearts. Captain, she said, noticing something in the altitude gauge, we're dropping too fast. He checked, then cursed under his breath. The updraft is pushing us down. We need more lift. Without waiting for permission, she pointed toward the auxiliary controls. Increase lift here. Just a touch. He trusted her now because she had earned it. He adjusted as she directed. The plane steadied for a moment. Just a moment, but it felt like hope. Then a sudden violent flash hit the cloud just ahead of them. Not lightning, something bigger. Something unexpected. The captain's eyes widened in shock as he whispered, "What is that?" And the student realized this storm was hiding something far more dangerous than they knew. For a moment, neither the captain nor the student spoke. They simply stared through the cockpit windows as the strange flash lit up the clouds again, not like lightning, not like anything natural. It was a sharp, pulsing glow, almost as if something massive inside the storm was reflecting light back. At them, the student felt the hairs on her arms rise. The sky was never supposed to look like this. The captain adjusted his headset, even though the radio wasn't working. This storm has interference. But that glow is not normal weather. His voice was tight, calculated, the voice of someone trying hard not to panic. Is there anything on the radar? She checked, scanning every corner of the screen. Numbers flicked faster. Wind speed jumped. Altitude warnings blinked red. But nothing explained the strange flash. No, she whispered. It's not showing anything, but the turbulence is strongest near that area. Another violent jolt shook the aircraft before she could finish speaking. The control panel rattled. A warning alarm beeped in rapid bursts. The girl held onto the armrests as the aircraft dipped suddenly, tilting to the left. She felt pressure pull her sideways. Passengers screamed again. Somewhere behind them, a luggage bin flew open and a bag fell out with a heavy thud. The cabin descended into chaos. The student felt the fear in their voices, fear thick enough to touch. The captain fought the controls. The storm is pulling us into a rotational current. If we don't escape it, the aircraft will spiral. The student's heart pounded harder. She forced her mind to stay focused, scanning the readings again. Something clicked in her memory, something Her father taught her about cloud structures during unstable conditions. "There's a gap," she said suddenly. "Look," she pointed at the radar. Between two dense clusters of red, a narrow strip of lighter color appeared. "If we angle slightly up and right, we might thread through it before the current tightens." The captain hesitated. The gap was thin, barely visible. "If we miss it, we'll hit the worst part of the storm. If we stay here," she said, "we won't have a chance at all." Her voice didn't sound young anymore. It sounded like someone who knew the sky's language. The captain stared at her for a long second, then nodded. "Guide me." She felt her breath deepen, her focus sharpening like a blade. "Increase thrust just a little, not too much. We can't overstress the engines. Now tilt 2 degrees up. Hold it, hold it." The aircraft began shifting, pushing toward the narrow gap in the storm. The turbulence got stronger, hitting them from every side, but forward movement continued. She watched the radar closely. The gap was closing. They needed to slip through before the storm sealed it. "Captain, a little more tilt carefully." He followed her command with complete trust now. The plane groaned again, but it moved. Through the window, the dark clouds parted just slightly, like two giant hands opening for a brief moment. Light real sunlight glimmered faintly through the thin opening. "Hold steady," she breathed. Almost a violent burst of wind slammed them from below, pushing the aircraft upward too fast. The captain struggled to correct the angle. The student grabbed the stabilizer control and adjusted it instinctively. The plane leveled. In the very last second, just enough to slip through the narrow passage, they burst into a thinner layer of cloud, and the cabin erupted in relieved gasps and cries. The turbulence didn't disappear entirely, but it eased enough for people to breathe again. The captain let out a long exhale, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I don't know how you saw that gap." She didn't answer. She wasn't sure how she saw it either. It felt like something inside her knew the storm better than her mind did, but their relief didn't last. As soon as they crossed the gap, a new alert flashed, this time on the communication panel. Static filled the speakers, but beneath it, a faint voice. Broken, distant, struggling to break through the interference. The captain leaned forward. "Is that ground control?" The girl adjusted the frequency dial. "It's not clear yet." The static faded a little. "You're off route. Heavy turbulence. Request. Identify." The voice came and went, like someone speaking underwater. But it meant one thing: they were close enough to regain communication. Hope flickered, but it was fragile. Then the static snapped sharply, followed by a clearer message. "Flight 92, respond immediately. You are entering restricted airspace." The student's eyes widened. The captain stiffened. "Restricted airspace? That doesn't make sense. We didn't turn that far." She checked the coordinates again, tracing their route from the moment the storm shifted them. Her stomach tightened. "We were pushed more than we realized," she said. "The storm dragged us north, much farther north." The captain adjusted the controls nervously. "We need clearance before we go any deeper, or we're going to have bigger trouble than weather." But trouble was already here. Another voice broke through the radio firmer. Colder. "Unidentified aircraft, alter your course now. You are approaching a defense zone." The cabin didn't hear the message, but the tension inside the cockpit deepened instantly. The student felt a chill rush through her. They were drifting into an area where mistakes were not forgiven. The storm wasn't their only danger anymore, and the sky around them had suddenly become much more complicated. Asterisk. The cockpit fell into a heavy silence after the radio message. The girl felt the air shift, as if the sky itself had turned watchful. The captain's hands tightened on the controls, his jaw clenching. Restricted airspace was dangerous, but a defense zone was something else entirely. It wasn't just weather or altitude anymore. It meant rules, warnings, and consequences far beyond their flight plan. He spoke quietly, almost to himself. We can't afford misunderstandings here. They don't wait long before reacting. The student swallowed hard. She had heard stories: aircraft drifting accidentally into sensitive zones, jets being scrambled simply because a pilot couldn't communicate clearly. And right now, their communication was still unstable, cutting in and out like an old radio from another era. She leaned closer to the panel. "Captain, the interference is still blocking our signal. They can't hear us clearly." Another sharp burst of static erupted. "Unidentified aircraft. Confirm your identity. Respond immediately or alter course." This time, the voice was firmer, less patient. "We have to answer them," she said, her voice thin but steady. "I'm trying." The captain replied, tapping the transmit button. "This is Flight 92. We are in an emergency situation. Our pilot is unconscious. We lost navigation stability due to a storm. And the radio cut out again. The cockpit lights dimmed for half a second as the aircraft shook. The storm behind them hadn't fully released its grip. It kept pushing. Cold wind and unexpected bursts. They were caught between danger behind and danger ahead. The girl looked at the coordinates again. Her heart tightened. "Captain, if we continue just a little farther, we'll cross the line fully." "I know," he said. "I'm fighting the wind, but the aircraft is slow to respond." For a moment, she felt helpless again, like she had on the ground after her father passed, staring at a future she didn't know how to navigate. She had walked away from the skies because they reminded her too much of what she lost. But now the sky needed her again, refusing to let her hide. She steadied her breath. Maybe I can help adjust our angle manually." He turned to her. He didn't question her ability anymore. He just nodded. "Tell me what you see." She traced the wind direction indicators. The storm wind was pushing them diagonally, and the defense zone ahead covered a wide curve of airspace. "If we tilt 2 degrees more left, not much, we might avoid crossing too deeply. But we need speed to break out of this pocket." The captain hesitated. "If I increase speed too much, we risk losing control in the crosswind." "I know," she said softly. "But if we don't, we break the boundary." Another radio message interrupted them, this time clearer than before, and colder than ever. "Unidentified aircraft, this is your final warning. Change course immediately." The student felt the weight of those words settle inside her. There wasn't time left to argue with risk. The decision had to be made now. "Captain," she whispered, "trust me." He stared at her, searching her face. She saw the fear in his eyes, a fear that wasn't weakness, but responsibility. Hundreds of people sat behind them, depending on him, behind her, on both of them. Finally, he inhaled deeply. "Tell me what to do." She guided her hand toward the manual stabilizer. "Increase thrust by 2%. Not more, then tilt slightly left, just slightly." He followed her instructions, adjusting the controls with slow, controlled pressure. The aircraft resisted at first, wobbling as the storm's leftover wind fought against them. But then it shifted just enough. The nose angled left. The drift reduced. Another tremor hit the plane, but it didn't push them as far this time. She checked the coordinates again. "It's working. Keep holding it. Don't change the angle." The captain steadied the aircraft, every muscle tense. Come on." Passengers behind them were unaware of the defense message, but they could feel the sudden change in altitude, the deeper hum of the engines, and the controlled tension in the attendants' movements. Fear spread silently, like ripples in a pond. Then something unexpected happened. The radio cleared, just a little, enough for a voice to break through clearly. "Flight 92, if you can hear me, acknowledge." The captain jumped toward the mic. "This is Flight 92. We hear you. Emergency situation on board." Our pilot is down, navigation disrupted, and we're correcting our path. A beat of silence. Then. Understood. Flight 92. Hold your current angle. Do not turn further. We are monitoring your route. Repeat, hold your angle. Relief washed through the cockpit like warm light, but the girl kept her focus. We're still too close to the boundary. We have to maintain this course perfectly. The captain nodded. We can do that. For the first time since the storm hit, the student felt a fragile hope returning. Her heartbeat slowed a little. Her hands steadied. The captain looked at her with something more than gratitude, something like respect. Without you, he said quietly, we would have crossed the line. This could have ended very differently. She lowered her gaze. I just did what I knew. What she didn't say was that every decision she made came from memories of her father, memories she thought she had buried forever. Before she could gather her thoughts, a new message came through the radio. Flight 92, stand by. Assistance is being deployed to guide you safely. The captain frowned. Assistance? The student's eyes widened as she stared out the cockpit window, because through the thinning clouds, appearing like shadows breaking through mist, something was heading toward them, not danger, not threat, but something powerful enough to change everything that would happen next. The girl blinked hard, unsure if her eyes were playing tricks on her. Through the clearing clouds, sleek shapes moved with controlled precision, silent, fast, and unmistakable. At first, they looked like dark streaks cutting through the sky. But as they approached, their outlines sharpened. Wings, long noses, smooth metallic bodies catching the light. They weren't commercial aircraft. They were jets. 2 of them. The captain exhaled slowly. They actually scrambled escorts. The student's heart thumped. She had only seen jets like these in documentaries, flying in tight formation, guiding troubled aircraft or intercepting unidentified ones. Seeing them in real life, this close felt surreal. One jet took the left side of the plane, the other glided to the right, matching their movement with unbelievable accuracy. The radio crackled again, but this time the voice was different, calm, confident, controlled. Flight 92, this is Eagle Lead. You're not alone. We have visual contact. The cabin behind them erupted in confused murmurs. Passengers pointed at the windows, some in fear, some in shock, others in absolute disbelief. A child whispered, "Wow," while his mother held him close. One elderly man began to cry softly, overwhelmed by the mix of danger and relief. The conpo. Captain responded immediately. Eagle Lead, we read you. We are stabilizing and avoiding restricted airspace as instructed. The jet pilot answered, you're doing good. Maintain your current heading. We'll guide you out. The student felt her shoulders loosen just a little. The presence of the jets didn't make them safe, but it made the sky feel less lonely. Like someone powerful had stepped in beside them at exactly the right time. Still, the weight of the cockpit didn't lift. The pilot was still unconscious. The storm's tailwind still shoved the plane in unpredictable bursts. And she and the captain were running on adrenaline, instinct, and whatever training she remembered from years ago. One of the jet pilots spoke directly to her now, as if sensing another mind working inside the cockpit. We see your altitude drifting. Adjust. 1 notch down. There you go. Good correction. Her eyes widened. They can see our movement so clearly. They're right beside us, the captain whispered. They see everything. A quiet sense of responsibility settled over her. If the jets were watching every detail, then every small mistake mattered. Even more. She adjusted the stabilizer gently, careful not to overcorrect. The aircraft steadied a little more. Then another message. Flight 92, storms behind you are closing fast. We need to exit this area quickly. Recommend increasing speed. The captain hesitated. Increasing speed could destabilize our angle. The student looked between the storm on the radar and the coordinates ahead. She calculated quietly in her mind, remembering how small aircraft behaved in recovery maneuvers. She wasn't flying a small plane now, but physics didn't change. She spoke softly. "We can increase speed. If we raise our nose very slightly to balance the pressure." The captain nodded. "Tell me when." She focused. "Now. Increase 2%. Stop. Hold angle, hold." The aircraft responded. The engines hummed deeper, stronger. The jets outside matched their speed instantly, gliding like guardians through the sky. For a few seconds, everything went smoothly. Then a violent gust hit them from the back, stronger than anything yet. The aircraft lurched forward. Screens flickered. A metallic groan echoed through the frame. In the cabin, people screamed. Some grabbed their armrests. Others held their loved ones tightly. The captain fought the controls. "Wind shear," he muttered. "It's trying to push us into a dive." The student reacted almost instantly. "Lift the nose 2 degrees, not more." The jet pilot's voice cut through the radio, firm and encouraging. "Good, you caught it early. Hold that. Adjustment. You're doing great up there." Her hands trembled, but her mind stayed sharp. She monitored every number, every flicker of light on the dashboard. She remembered her father's steady hands guiding hers over a simulator control. She remembered the soft pride in his voice when she corrected her first wind drift. She remembered why she had loved flying before it hurt too much to continue. The captain glanced at her. "You saved us again." She shook her head. "We both did." Outside, the clouds slowly began to thin. The sky wasn't fully clear yet, but she could see streaks of pale blue breaking through. The storm's grip was finally loosening. Another message came through the radio. "Flight 92, good progress. Air is stable ahead. Prepare for descent briefing." Descent. The word hit her like a stone dropped into water. Descent meant landing. Landing meant she wasn't done yet. Her breath tightened. She had helped stabilize the plane, avoided the storm, corrected the drift, and guided them alongside military jets, but landing was different. It required precision, confidence, and a calm mind. And she hadn't landed a real aircraft in her life. The captain saw the fear flicker in her eyes for the first time. "What's wrong?" She didn't speak for a moment. She stared at her hands, at the instruments, at the soft blue returning to the sky. "I've never actually landed a plane this size." The cockpit fell silent. Even the sky outside felt like it paused. The jets continued to glide beside them. The captain took a slow, steady breath. "Then we'll do it together." She swallowed hard, her heart pounding as the reality sank in, because the hardest part of the flight was still ahead of her. The girl's pulse quickened as the horizon widened in front of them. The clouds finally broke open, revealing calmer skies and golden light spreading across the vast world below. But the peace outside didn't match the storm inside her. She knew what landing meant. It meant responsibility. It meant precision. It meant one wrong angle could undo everything they survived. She stared at the runway coordinates blinking on the screen. It looked impossibly small from up here, like a thin thread waiting for her to guide the giant aircraft toward it. The radio crackled again. "Flight 92, this is Eagle Lead. You are cleared for guided descent. The runway is prepared. Emergency. Cruiser on standby." The captain nodded and gave the girl a steady, grounding look. "Listen, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to help me bring us down." She inhaled shakily. "I know the steps. I'm scared I'll freeze." "You won't," he said. "You didn't freeze through a storm, through airspace warnings, through turbulence most pilots never face. This is just the last chapter." His voice wasn't commanding. It was human, soft, carrying a quiet trust that warmed her chest. She nodded slowly. "Okay, let's do this." The jet pilot spoke again, gentle now, like a teacher guiding a nervous student. Flight 92 will stay on each side until you touch down. You're doing incredible work. She never thought someone in a fighter jet would say those words to her. It gave her strength she didn't expect. The captain began the descent sequence. Bring throttle to 72%. Now watch our rate. Tell me if we drop too fast. She focused on the altimeter, watching every number change. The aircraft dipped purposefully, the nose pointing toward the runway far below. Rate is steady, she said. No drift yet. Below them, the airport grew clearer. Fire trucks lined the edges. Ambulances waited. Crew members stood in rows, watching the sky with wide, tense eyes. They didn't know who was flying the plane. They didn't know it was a college student holding the line between hope and disaster. The captain lowered the flaps slightly. The aircraft responded with a gentle shake. Tell me wind direction. She checked the screen again. Left crosswind. Mild but rising. He nodded. Correcting. The jets outside adjusted their formation, maintaining a protective arc. Their presence made the descent feel less lonely, as if invisible hands steadied the wings. The girl swallowed hard as the runway grew larger. Her voice wavered. We're coming in fast. That's okay, the captain said. Better fast than unstable. We slow on approach, but her hands trembled again. Landing wasn't like correcting mid-air. There were no second chances once the wheels touched down. She remembered all the landings she practiced in simulators with her father. He would sit beside her and tap the dashboard, gently. Feel the ground coming to you. He used to say, don't fight it. Guide it. She closed her eyes for half a second, hearing his voice as clearly as if he were sitting next to her now. When she opened them again, her fear had softened just enough to move. Altitude 1500, she said. Crosswind stable. Angle is good. The captain began slowing the engines. Keep calling it. 1200, 1000. Wind shift small tilt right needed. He adjusted instantly. Got it. The aircraft aligned with the runway so perfectly that even the jets eased slightly, sensing the approach. Was clean. 800, 700. We're steady. Passengers held their breath. Some clutched each other. Many whispered prayers. And though no one saw her through the cockpit door, she became the silent hope holding them together. The captain's voice tightened. Final approach. Prepare. The girl's voice was calm. 500, 400. Angle perfect. Maintain, maintain. Outside, the runway lights glowed in white lines stretching toward them like a path carved just for this moment. 300, 200, Captain, we're good. Landing gear down, he said. The gear extended. With a heavy clunk. The aircraft drifted slightly, but she caught it. Tiny correction left, she said. He corrected. 100, 80, 60. Hold. The earth rushed up toward them. 40, 30, 20. The captain lifted the nose gently. The wheels touched. A violent bounce shook the plane for a heartbeat. Then the tires caught. The aircraft roared as it sped across the runway, the engines reversing thrust. The plane slowed until finally it stopped. Silence fell. Then a wave of cries burst from the cabin, sobs of relief. Applause that shook the fuselage. People thanking the sky, thanking whoever saved them. Flight attendants sank to their knees, overwhelmed. Some passengers looked toward the cockpit with tears in their eyes, not knowing who sat inside or what she had done. The captain turned to the girl. His eyes were shining not with fear, but with gratitude deeper than words. You didn't just help, he said. You saved us. She stared ahead, breath trembling, eyes filling with tears she didn't try to hide. I just did what I could. You did more, he whispered. Outside, the jets flew past in one final sweep, like a salute before disappearing into the sky. As firefighters surrounded the aircraft and emergency crews rushed forward. The captain placed a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder. "You were unnoticed when you boarded," he said softly. "But today, you became the reason hundreds of people walked off this plane alive." For the first time since her father's death, she felt the sky wasn't a place of pain. It was a place where she belonged.